the most common phases that I've had in the last couple of years or recently is narcissism. So many people have talked about narcissistic people. There's so many videos on the internet that talk about how to overcome a narcissistic, how to spot a narcissistic. You know, some people have said that I'm a survivor of a narcissistic person, people who their lives have been ruined by narcissistic people. And I say to myself, that would be a perfect addition to all those videos that you have watched or you have seen that you've had people talking about, by actually talking about this book called Surrounded by Narcissists. Now, this is what we're going to be reviewing on today's book table. I'm going to be telling you what I learned from the book, how to apply it, and why I actually think about this book. Now, if you look at this book very closely, it looks very similar to one of the most trending books around, which is called Surrounded by Idiots. One of the key things that he explains in this book, he says that narcissistic people thrive on their ego. Their ego is something that they stand on, feed on, and also, you know, kind of capitalize in every single way that they can do it. So according to the book, when it comes to narcissistic people, they have this thing about the feeling that they feel like they are more special, they are better than you, they can do anything and everything that they want to do, and they can achieve and have anything that they want to have regardless of anything that happens. The most common traits that you always hear about when it comes to narcissistic people is always like they lack empathy, you know, they thrive on their ego. So let's start by talking about what is a narcissistic person or what is narcissist. So according to the book itself, he says that narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder categorized by long-term pattern of exaggerated feelings of self-importance and excessive craving for admiration and struggles with empathy. That is what a narcissistic person is. He also explains in the very first chapter of the book that you can't treat narcissism with medication or learn to live with it. Narcissism is a personality disorder. It is important to realize that you can immediately lay to rest any ideas you have of treating the condition. So starting off the whole entire book review, I'm just going to say to you that you can't fix a narcissistic person. So as we talk about this book and you see signs of a narcissistic person, or maybe you are, or something like that, it's not something that you can treat or fix. It's a disorder. It's something that is engraved in the brain, but it can be managed. Okay, before we get into that, if you do not know who I am, my name is Lucia Kao. I do talk about self-help books, and I'm a serious self-help book reader that channels all the knowledge that I read from these books, shares it with you so you can become a smarter person, and taking away all that stigma which surrounds self-help books. And why so many people say I cannot read self-help books because they are wishy-washy. I want to change your mindset to let you know that if you read the books very constructively and break them down, then you can achieve knowledge. Remember this, every single time you read a self-help book, you don't have to remember it from chapter 1 to the last chapter. If you learn just one thing, that very particular thing can be the thing that can change your life and your perspective on a particular thing or an idea. So according to Thomas, he uses this framework called the DISC framework, and that framework itself, it is literally what is on top of the book, literally what is on the cover of the book: the red, the yellow, the green, and the blue. And it says all of us as human beings, we have all these kind of personalities based on this color, and I'm going to tell you each personality that it is and the target that narcissistic person will target. Now, for example, if you are a red person, you are definitely a dominant person, either in an organization or in your life. And narcissistic people will try as much as they can to reduce your dominancy or to reduce your authority and use that authority against you later on. And the traits of someone with a red personality are competitive, assertive, and goal-oriented. When a narcissistic person attacks a red personality is by literally provoking them, and then they use their response as something against them. They label them as being aggressive, they label them as being the angry person. For example, a narcissistic person in a meeting or in a project will try to always ignore someone with a red personality, knowing that they will react, and that reaction itself would be something that will be looked at like, you're not a great manager, you're not a great leader, because you responded to me like this. A good manager should not be in a position whereby they should respond to me like this. But they are the same person that triggered that response from you because of the kind of power and authority they have. Because narcissistic people are not very out loud there. They do things in a very subtle way to attack you. Now, if you have a yellow personality, that is categorized as being influential, optimistic, social, and relationship driven. So the tactic that a narcissistic person can use for someone who has a yellow personality is literally they exploit their fear of rejection and use that as a way of approval. For example, they constantly want to be reassured that they are good enough, reassured that they're the best people, reassured that they are the center of attention. Remember, narcissistic person is all about the ego, it's all about the center of attention. They all want to be in that position whereby they are the most praised person. In you giving them that sympathy and praising them, you are emptying from your cup and you're getting back nothing, because a narcissistic person, chances are they're not saying the same thing to you. They're not telling that you're a lovable person, they're not telling that you're a wonderful person, they're not telling you all these lovely things, but they want you to say those things to them. So narcissistic people, for a yellow personality, they tend to play a victim. And what they do is that because someone with a yellow personality is kind of like a sociable person, they try to isolate that person away from the society, away from friends, because you always feel the need that, oh, I need to go back home because maybe my boyfriend is going to get worried, or he doesn't feel good enough for himself, or I have to pamper him, I have to help him, I have to do all those kind of things. And they know what they're doing because they're isolating you. They know your personality thrives on being social, being relationship driven, and because of that, they are draining that away from you and manipulating you and making you feel like you're not taking care of them. So they are the victim all the time, and you have to pamper their victim, personality, or their victim set that they have made. So what narcissistic people do is that they push someone with a green personality, knowing that people with a green personality don't like conflict. They don't like being in situations whereby they kind of be in conflicts. So they try to push them to do a lot of things. They try to push them to kind of like go beyond their limits, knowing that this person, because they hate confrontation, they don't want to be the people that speak up. They're just going to conform and literally do whatever they want them to do. For example, if you find a narcissistic parent, they will try to make their child do everything and control everything that the child does or tries to kind of get to. They guilt trip their children, hoping that the child would try to avoid conflict. So they use your personality as someone that hates conflict, does not like conflict, and they use that a lot to push you to do a lot of things because you don't want to fight. You don't want to be in a situation whereby you complain. There are people naturally that hate conflict, that don't like to argue, that don't like to fight, and because of that, if a narcissistic person lands on you, they are going to use that advantage of your own self to kind of manipulate you. You find yourself doing things that you know yourself you don't want to do. I've met so many people that I'm saying, why don't you talk back to them? Someone treats them bad. I'm like, why don't you talk back to them? Why don't you tell them how you feel? And they're like, oh no, I don't want to go into an argument. I don't want to go into conflict. But I'm like, they're not treating you well and you're not happy. And you can see on their faces and you can see how they're looking like. But the person is like, no, I don't want to get into conflicts. I don't want to, clash with them. I just want peace. That aspect of I just want peace, they use that to the maximum and you don't even understand. In the book, Thomas explains that having a narcissistic person around you is not something that you think one day they are going to change, or you think that you're going to treat, or you think that they're going to become better at all. And he says that narcissistic people psychologically are detrimental to anybody who they try to attack. And in my notes that I put, he says that Erickson emphasizes that prolonged exposure to narcissistic individuals can lead to severe psychological effects, including anxiety, depression, and diminished self-esteem. Narcissists are adept at creating dynamic. Whether they are victims, they become dependent on their validation, often leading to a cycle of emotional abuse. They emotionally abuse you because they are parasites. They thrive on you. They want their ego to be, pampered all the time. They are always the ones who are floating on top. They need to be the best. They need to be the better person in that friendship, the better person in that relationship, the better person in any environment. So they dominate everything, and psychologically, you self-doubt yourself. You don't feel good enough. You just feel like you're less than. If you're in any relationship, and when you're talking about any romantic relationship, we're talking about any relationship at all boards, if there is a person around that every single time they constantly have this need that they need to be better than you, even when you do something great, they remind you of something great that they did before, that literally changed your life. So they will constantly remind you of the good things that they have done. So regardless of whatever good thing you have done, it does not matter because they matter most before you. They are the ones and not you. They are on top of everything and not you. They are dominant. They are number one. They do everything the best way. They are everything in this life. Your life depends on them. They even make you feel like you cannot survive without them. Their presence is more important than you can ever imagine. One of the major things that Erikson does emphasize is that right now, in this current climate that we are in, there is a lot of rising of narcissistic people. Social media is heightening that kind of personality within people and normalizing behavior that shouldn't be normalized when it comes to narcissistic people. He explains that the effects of, like, let's say, selfies or validation, on social media, it is creating a lot of people with narcissistic traits. And sometimes you don't even have to be fully a narcissistic person, but you can have a little bit of traits of a narcissistic person that are very, very subtle, but you still do have them. The sense of entitlement, the sense of diminished empathy. Erikson, he emphasizes the aspect of self-care. When you are suffering from someone who is narcissistic, or you've been with someone who is a narcissistic person, self-care is very important. And self-care is not all about putting a mask on, because as much as a mask is nice and it makes you feel good, there's nothing it can do with you with how you mentally feel. Things like setting boundaries, things like saying no, things like walking away, things like creating a tough skin are also forms of self-care, because you are choosing yourself. You're choosing self to love yourself in that aspect. I hate talking about self-care because it's something that is always talked about in every video that you watch when it comes to this kind of aspects. But it's good. Sometimes it's taking walks and feeling good and feeling nature and stuff like that to make you feel your own self, and also getting into the groove of you. Focusing on aspects of personal growth. Narcissistic people, they do really thrive on making you feel like you're worthless. And one of the things that you have to regain within yourself is to remember that you're worthy, is to remember that you are valuable, is to remember that you deserve every good thing. Even if they downplayed your achievements and downplayed you as a person, it's very important that you actually take that as serious as you can. So in the book itself, it goes deeply into so many aspects. He also talks about aspects of narcissistic culture, when the problem affects more than just a few individuals, where a narcissistic person is not just affecting one person, it's affecting a whole group of people. He breaks it down so many ways. Narcissistic culture as well. One of the most important quotes here in the book, he says that normalizing narcissism, he says that sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusion destroyed. Understanding that sometimes you're living in a lie of how a narcissistic person is. The book itself, he also has this narcissistic test that has the sample and it has the score. It has questions like, modesty doesn't become me, do you take it or you don't? It's literally trying to test if you have narcissistic traits or narcissistic behavior that you can kind of look at. It has questions like, I can usually talk my way out of anything, I can try to accept the consequences of behavior. That you keep taking every single thing that you want to look at, and it goes on and on and on and on that he talks about. The last chapter, he talks about the aspect of being the change. The quote here is that every man is guilty of all the good he didn't do. Too much, over the top, maybe, but I don't want a reaction from you. I want you to give these matters some thought. Generally, you see, I think this stuff is important. Everyone agrees that narcissism is a bad thing in the long term. Assuming we really are living in a narcissistic culture in the society that makes us act and behave in ways that may not come entirely naturally to us, is there somewhere we could reserve this trend of narcissistic people, this trend of bringing out narcissistic people? Is something that is saying that let's be the change that we want everybody else to see. Then also, when you come towards the very end of the book, he has that picture where it says that it gives you what your personality is. It says that red is a business-like, present, is a business-like, yellow, elegant, green, friendly, blue, law-abiding, and also it talks about what kind of aspect they live in. So what do I think about this very particular book? Now, when it comes to narcissism and narcissistic behavior, it's something that is very, very profound in our society, and those people can be very, 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 very strong and detrimental to your own personal growth, and you always have to be aware of them. This book dives so deep into some people already narcissistic people. How do they come out of it? How he can actually just help them in a way, but also helping you recognize if you have any narcissistic traits and how to watch out for them, and also understand your personality and whether someone around you is a narcissistic person and is attacking those aspects of your own, personality. So this book, I would rate it a 5-star for sure, and anybody, I think everyone should read this book. You don't have to read it because you're like, oh, I recognize narcissistic traits. No, you just have to read the book for you to have an understanding of certain things. I always say, don't read because you have a problem. It's like, don't cure your disease or your illness. It's like I always say, don't find medicine only when you have an illness or when you have a disease. No, find ways to prevent something before it actually happens. It's the same thing when it comes to a book. Read books not because you're a narcissistic person, not because you've experienced a narcissistic person, not because you are in something with a narcissistic person. Sometimes it's reading books to be aware if someone comes to you that has a narcissistic trait. It's easy for you to spot them and stay away from them because guess what? You read the book. Guess what? You were smarter to, indulge yourself in such information. I know you won't remember it, and I am someone who writes things on Notion and puts all my notes on Notion of things that I've read so I can remind myself and go into things like that and not forgetting things. So I would say definitely pick up this book, read this book, understand it, and take it with a pinch of salt. Don't read it all together. Read bit by bit, okay? So anyways, that's it. That's all I can say about the book Surrounded by Narcissist, if that makes sense. I'm also thinking about reading a book Surrounded by Idiots and see what actually it's all about. After I've read this one, I feel like that would also be a very, very good book. But apart from that, I want to end this video here and let me know what you think in the comments, whether you read this book, heard about this book, what narcissism is, have you experienced it, do you have some traits of it, and do you think that is something that can be actually tackled and something that can actually be prevented in any kind of way. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, my name remains Lucia Cowell, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Don't forget to enter the book giveaway, leave a comment, share it on your Instagram stories and tag me, and then you can enter to win any of the books I talk about. Anyways, have a lovely day. Bye.